Hi, I'm Mark Chandler, Professor of Practice and Director of Government Relations for the Department of Intelligence and Security Studies at Coastal Carolina University. I think when you start to look at teaching and coming from, as a practitioner or someone who worked in that environment, you think, oh, this will be easy, and it's not. You have to really get in there and understand the theory behind what you're trying to expand and help develop in the student's understanding. And so really, I was fortunate that I had a couple of teaching assignments throughout my career, so I could rely on that. But really developing courses, working my way through that, and ensuring that I could take the theory and mix that with practical application and help create that understanding and knowledge for our students. And I think that was a challenge for me. It really was. This is something that I talk about that I think our younger generation, and really a lot of folks who haven't been exposed to say the military like I was, 21 years, a couple of combat tours, when you start to look at that, it's hard to explain the gravity of what we sometimes have to do in intelligence and the significance of that. And so talking about understanding how you as an analyst are going to have to determine what something means with limited information, and then talking about how the major decisions are going to be made. Decisions made by the President of the United States that will ultimately affect our national security. The students who start to see that, and we've talked about it unfortunately after Russia invaded Ukraine, and we worked our way through that process to see that something happening there has such global implications for Europe, the United States, and how that affects the global economy. The students start to see that, and then I can see the evolution where they start to think at the broader context of the world, and that awakes them. And speaking of that class, I did an intelligence and war class the first time we did it. My students did an exercise through the class to try to forecast the Russian invasion, if there would be or not. They got that down in a time within 24 hours of when the Russians actually invaded. I would put that class against anybody in the intelligence community. I was very proud of them showing that learning has occurred and understood that. I think there's a lot of parallels between teaching and what I did through my military career and my DoD career, and that is, number one, I believe in mentorship. And what I would try to do to my younger Marines or my younger analysts was cultivate them, get them to think beyond just their immediate situation and try to grow that. It's much like growing the knowledge here and creating a better thinking individual. So helping them grow and evolve as analysts or as people even, I think that's where I take that and I put it in the classroom. Because to me, it's not just the book learning in the classroom. It's the knowledge that they develop. It's the ability to think through a process. So I bring those together. It's almost as if I take a lecture and I try to mentor through that lecture at times, through that opening. I don't want to just do a dry lecture. And so I try to create a conversation in the classroom. And I get a lot of joy when I see the students, their eyes, and I see that growth that goes there. There's something I say at the beginning of every semester to my students, and that is, I want you to learn to think, because we as humans have a limited development of our thinking process, and I want you to grow your knowledge. If you get nothing outside of the semester, learn how to think, not what to think, that's entirely up to you, but learn how to think and grow your knowledge. I start every day off with a current events, and the evolution that the students take. And from the beginning of class, whether it's just afraid to speak up or then more confidence that they have at the end of class to talk about an issue, but talk about the underlying facts of the issue, that to me makes my day. That's why I'm here. I'm helping them understand things or grow a better understanding of their world out there. I'm kind of paying it forward, I think, if you will. Number one, I'm very proud to be associated with Coastal Carolina Intelligence Program and our new Center for Applied Intelligence. This program, and I tell the students this without any reservation at all, they will be better prepared as young analysts going into the government or business or whatever they may want to do after graduating this program than they would at any military institution. I have seen the young analysts come into the world. I've been a recipient of that, and I know what we do here better prepares these kids for that career, and they'll start out much stronger, much more aware. So that's a difference that I see right there. And then if they choose to make that sacrifice, this is the other thing I tell these kids. You're sitting in a classroom, you're taking a step that's a little bit about making a sacrifice. And not everyone makes that sacrifice today. We're not going to be the highest paid people. You know, we're not going to work the easiest hours. And so when we start to go into this, that's a self-sacrifice and putting somebody above yourself as you work your way through. But I think these kids are going to come out much stronger, much better prepared as they head into that intelligence community. I would love to be on the receiving end of some of our graduates. So in my intelligence applications class, it's an advanced level class, and what I try to do is replicate the environment that the students will find themselves in if they choose to go work for the national intelligence community. And we do that through the written products. Literally, I use the format, everything but a classified material for the President's Daily Brief or a Joint Chiefs of Staff current intelligence briefing. The same limited number of lines that you have to tell a complete story. And I try to equate it to this. I said in English you may be asked to write a 5-page or 10-page paper. That's fine. You have to put that same amount of information and meaning in 1 page, because we have to be concise and clear, and we have to focus in so our reader understands what we're saying. And so there's a strong emphasis on writing. So what we do, and the world's been in its chaos generous to give me enough material to work on in class, that I take the students and I throw them into the deep end and I say, okay, what's going on? What are the key points here? How would you answer me? How would you brief the President? How would you brief the Secretary of State or the Secretary of Defense? And they struggle to find the key elements. And once they realize what the key elements are, then they start communicating like an intelligence professional. So I'll throw the syllabus out for a week or so and throw them in the deep end of the world. And we'll walk our way through how you have to understand it. I'm hesitant to have them watch my interviews. I will be selective in that, and then I tell them to criticize me. And I say, I don't want you to tell me I did a good job. I want you to tell me what I did wrong based on what I'm teaching you to do. And they're leery at first to do that. And then I point out, well, do you think my eye contact was off? Do you think I said too many times? And they go, well, now that you mention it, yeah. And so that's what I want them to feel free to do that, because I do make mistakes. I make a lot of them. And I said, we learn through mistakes, and I want them to learn without maybe going through all the hard knocks that I had to. I try to develop this relationship with the students that, and like I have with my junior analysts, my junior Marines, there's a line we don't cross as the Marine boss or the senior executive in defense or a professor. But that doesn't mean we can't have a relationship that creates learning in a positive environment. So I try to have that with the students so that they're not intimidated. Because one thing I talk to them about is, as a junior analyst, you're going to go out there and you're going to be intimidated by everybody in the room, because you're going to think, I don't know this, I don't have this information. And what I try to tell them is, that's when I would find the junior analyst in the room and I would ask them what they think. What do you think about what these people who have 10 years of experience have said? And they would be hesitant. I said, do you understand it? And they would, well, no, not really. I said, then we've failed our mission. If we can't explain it where they understand it, then we failed. And that gives that junior analyst a sense of confidence, and I want the students to have that as well. But it also makes us better intelligence people, and I think better students and better professors. I think this generation can teach me a lot, and so one thing, I'm an old guy, so we have to deal with technology, and so that's a common joke if you're in any of my classes, the technology challenge that I represent. But in seriousness, I think they give me insight to their thinking. I think this generation has grown up around technology, and they have at their fingertips more technology in a cell phone than I had when I started out in the 80s. We didn't even have computers, much less cell phone technology that could have the information from the world at their disposal. And so I talk to them about how powerful that can be, and the challenges that that presents. And so what they teach me is all the different sources that are out there. So I use what my students bring to me, and I try to incorporate it in the research I do for some of the interviews I've done, or put that back into the classroom in practice. And we both learn from that. So these kids have taught me a great deal. I'm trying to pay that forward with them, and they're trying to bring me up into the 21st century. The interviews really fall into two types. There's the live interview and the recorded interview. Actually, three types. There's a print interview that I've got a couple of outlets that will reach out to me. We'll have a conversation, and then they'll publish something out there. So you have that opportunity where you can make mistakes, you can talk back and forth, and then you're giving your thoughts on that. The same with some of the recorded interviews. They're going to go back, they're going to splice those, edit, and work their way into what comes out. You never know what part's going to come out. The toughest, I think, are the live interviews. And with that takes the most of my research. I would say I spend several hours a week researching what's taking place in a certain area. I don't know if I'm going to do an interview that weekend or in the middle of the week, but what I've learned is I've taken my old practice of being an intelligence analyst and maintaining that data. I have over 70 pages of material just since the start of the Israeli-Hamas war. And the importance is I can maintain my facts and then work to an assessment. But in a live interview, what you say is what you get. And so I have to, and I try to apply this with my students. It's like a current intelligence briefing. You're on the spot, you're being asked questions. I try to practice what I preach in the classroom about assessments and opinions, and minimize my opinions unless I can support it with facts. And so I don't want to be a hypocrite to my students. So I believe in that preparation, and in that live interview, even though it does happen sometimes, I try not to go too far down an opinion path that I can't support. And so I do that. It's the research. Now, who asked me? I have been asked after the Chinese balloon incident. I had some outreach from Vietnam and China, and I'm going to shy away from something like that. But I get outreach from around the country. I've actually had BBC reach out, and I've had some Israelis reach out from Israel to this. So there's that follow-up that comes in. I have to be careful and judicious in who I get. So it's a fine line, and I just try to walk it, because I'm representing CCU also. And I don't want to put CCU in a bad spot or be a bad representative of the university. I think it's important. I know that the first thing out of an interviewer's mouth is they're going to say, from Coastal Carolina University. To me, I'm very proud to represent Coastal Carolina, and I don't want to embarrass her, and I don't want to put us in a bad spot. So I'm going to be careful as to how that's portrayed out there. I didn't realize how many people are watching these interviews. And they go onto YouTube. A lot of the live ones get recorded. They go onto YouTube, or they go onto other aspects. People make a lot of comments on there, and they're not all favorable. And so when I look at that, and I probably take those unfavorable comments and a little more to heart, like constructive criticism, but it's the misunderstanding because of how you can, and I'm not saying this happens, but how you can manipulate the words in an interview or your interpretation. To me, you have to listen to the whole context. And if something's taken out of context, I really want to get in there and say, no, that is not what I meant, or, I'm sorry you feel that way. But I don't. I have never responded to any of the comments out there because it could just exacerbate the situation. There's a lot of positive comments also. That's fine. That's not what I'm looking for, but I really want to enhance understanding. I was asked once about what do I think about certain protests. And I said, I don't mind protests. We have a First Amendment. I said, as long as you protest with an understanding of the history and the facts and all that, you can have any opinion you want. That's what our country's founded on, and I think we have to do that. But let's create that understanding. I get a lot of pushback on that for not being open to the First Amendment, which that bothered me, because I do feel I'm open to that, and I try to be as balanced as I can. on the situation. I think that the difference between who I talk to going through my career and then talking to a live audience, you've got to look at, one, it's a small audience, 1 or 2 or 5 people in a room, or several thousand, or knowing that YouTube is clicked on, I think, over 4 million views now. I'm going, wow, that's pretty heady stuff. And I get nervous, and this is one thing. I am nervous before every interview. I go through a period of nervousness of, am I going to get this right? Am I going to cover the right material? I was nervous before every briefing in my career. And so I think that balance and that awareness of my limitations keeps me balanced for that. But I'll tell you, I don't know which is tougher. Briefing one in the Department of Defense and the White House, or briefing 4 million out here. So they both carry their weight, but I am nervous before any interview.
Okay.
Even this one.